Alright, so Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4 got announced yesterday. I just made a video talking about if this game is actually going to be taken seriously and considered a legitimate fighting game, which I also made a note to check out one of my previous videos where I talked about the difference between anime games and fighting games. I think both videos have really interesting discussions about the future and what we can expect to see for this game. Talking about if we can expect to see it in tournaments like EVO and stuff like that, etc, etc. But for this video, I really just wanted to talk about the game itself. And just as a Dragon Ball Z fan and as a Dragon Ball Z video game fanatic, because I grew up with a lot of Dragon Ball Z games, for those of you guys that don't know, I kind of just wanted to talk about this game and overall my thoughts and yeah, just what I'm thinking about how this game's gonna be. And in comparison to previous Dragon Ball Z games, do I think this is the best choice, and you know, what I would have wanted, and just overall everything about this game. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so first and foremost, I just want to say, I know that everyone is really excited about this game. Like, I get it, right? And I too am really excited about this game. I think that trailer looked fire. Like, that trailer killed it. The transition, oh my god, sexy, crispy. I cannot wait to see more of this game. The gameplay, like, I'm really excited. I am really excited as well. But I want to remind you guys watching this video that this game may or may not actually be as hype or as good as we expect it to be, or we're hoping for it to be based on that trailer alone. Because you got to remember a few things. The first is that if this game is being made by Spike Chunsoft, which were the original developers of the Budokai Tenkaichi series, they have not had a great anime game track record as of recently, because they are the same people that brought us Jump Force, and we all know how that did, which was not great. Of course, this trailer is looking much better than Jump Force ever could, so that's a good sign, yeah, but only time will tell how the product actually does come out in the end. And like I said before, they have not had a great game track record as of late, so I don't know. But also, the thing that I think people forget a lot is that Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 was probably one of the most beloved Dragon Ball Z games of all time. Probably is still to this day one of the most beloved Dragon Ball Z games of all time. But people forget why that is. The reason why that game was so beloved for so many years by so many people was because of the roster. That was the one game that Dragon Ball Z had where you could play as literally any character ever to exist in Dragon Ball. The roster had over 150 characters in that game, and that, I think, was the most insane thing that has ever happened in any Dragon Ball Z game, in any anime game, period. Like, a roster of that size, honestly, it's groundbreaking even from a video game perspective. Like, even Smash Bros doesn't have that many characters. That's insane. Granted, a lot of those characters are just forms and transformations of some of the other characters, but still, a lot of those characters are original characters, and they all do have unique assets and stuff like that, and you know, they all have their own moves and stuff. And the fact that you could play as characters like Chi-Chi, Jackie Chun, honestly was just insane to me. And I remember when I played it growing up, like, I really loved the game. I love the amount of detail and love that they put into that game, not just from the roster perspective, but also just from the menus and the little mini games and stuff. Everything about it was great. But I will say, I think the one thing that does stand out above the rest was the roster. If you take that away, I don't think the game was all that special, to be honest. In my opinion, the best 3D Dragon Ball Z game to ever come out was Raging Blast. Raging Blast 1, I think, is far superior than any Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi game. If we're strictly just talking about the gameplay and the graphics, I think Raging Blast 1 kills it. It nails the graphics, and overall, Raging Blast is pretty much just Budokai Tenkaichi, but it looks better and it runs smoother and it's less janky. Budokai Tenkaichi had kind of a janky feel to it. Like, arguably you could say that it was a little bit faster paced than Raging Blast, not by much though. It was maybe just a tad bit faster paced, but honestly, I don't think it's worth it for how janky and just jaggedy everything feels, from like the hits to the impact to everything. It doesn't look as good as Raging Blast in my opinion. Raging Blast just has that impact and everything just feels solid, and it's just packaged really nicely. The graphics, everything about it feels smooth, and it really captures that anime feel, but also you don't have that jank that Budokai Tenkaichi had. And I prefer Raging Blast 1 over Raging Blast 2 because I think Raging Blast 1 has a better art style and it runs a lot smoother. With Raging Blast 2, they added a lot more characters, so that's why I think a lot of people liked that game more, because the roster did increase tremendously, I will say that. But the art style change was a bit drastic for me, and I didn't like it as much. It wasn't terrible, but I didn't like how they changed the art style. It didn't have that anime feel to it that Raging Blast 1 had. Everything was a lot more 3D and polygon-esque, right? And also the flow of it was a bit less smooth because they added this whole mechanic where your character glows purple and stuff, and I kind of forgot all the specifics, but I just remember I wasn't a fan of it as much as I loved just the Raging Blast 1 gameplay. And also the Raging Blast 1 story mode was a much better experience than Raging Blast 2, which had like this board game kind of mode, and I don't know. I mean, not that that really matters because I think there's two types of Dragon Ball fans, right? The ones that don't really want to play through the same story over and over and over again, and the ones that do and want that as like the best experience that they can have. And to me, honestly, I'm not really either one at this point. I guess if I had to say, I would probably lean more towards the side of like giving new stuff, but again, I just was not a fan of that Raging Blast 2 mode where you had to like do different missions across that and stuff, and you had to grind that, I think, to unlock characters. I was not a fan of that. I would have much rather preferred Raging Blast 1 with the story mode and how that was done. I think looked way cooler and was much better than Raging Blast 2's story mode, if you can even call it that, experience, right? I wouldn't say I'm really either one personally. I just want a single player mode that's good. And I think Raging Blast 1 was better in that sense as well, even though it was just telling the story of Dragon Ball Z again. But still, it did it in a good way. So the question is, will Tenkaichi 4 tell the story mode of Dragon Ball Z yet again, or will they do something new? That's one thing we got to think about, because we've already got Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, which I feel like is the ultimate like way of telling the Dragon Ball Z story in a video game. And then we've got Dragon Ball FighterZ, which tells a brand new story, which I personally love. I'm just gonna put this out there. I still think Dragon Ball FighterZ is the best Dragon Ball Z game and the best anime game that we've ever gotten, and I don't think that this new Budokai Tenkaichi game is going to overtake that game for me, because even though the story mode of FighterZ wasn't the best experience, I think that it's just a really cool thing to have. The fact that it's a new story, the fact that it focuses on Android 21, which I think is one of the coolest characters to ever exist in Dragon Ball, one of the coolest things to ever happen in Dragon Ball, and the fact that you get all these really cool, unique moments that would never happen in the series, like Frieza talking smack to Cell, and like, you know, just all these really unique interactions between characters that would have never gotten in the Dragon Ball Z anime or in a video game story mode that was just a retelling of the anime, I think is so cool. That on top of the fact that it's a legitimate competitive fighting game, and the graphics look amazing, the roster is amazing, everything about it is amazing, and I love it. I don't think this game is going to overtake that game for me, but I'm not gonna lie, ever since I sold Xenoverse 2, which I do not regret by any means, I have been missing a game where I could just fly around, you know? As much as I hated Xenoverse 2 so much, I do miss being able to just hop on, fly around with my created character, and just, you know, honestly just fly around. I really miss just flying around in a 3D open space, you know, with colorful backgrounds and stuff, and that's the one thing I do miss about selling Xenoverse 2. So I am excited that this game got announced, because it seems that this game is going to be able to fill that void for me, so I'm really excited about that. But I don't know, we'll see. I mean, aside from the core gameplay itself of fighting your opponent, are they going to have a mode where you can just fly around? Are they going to have a create your character mode? Who really knows? Is this game really going to replace Xenoverse entirely? I don't think so. I would rather have it to where create a character stays with Xenoverse, but to be honest, I hate Xenoverse. I don't want Xenoverse 3. I know people really want Xenoverse 3. I don't care. I don't want that game. I want it to die forever because I hate that game so much. If they gave create a character to Tenkaichi, I'm not really sure how I'd feel about it, because I do think that it could work pretty well, and honestly work a little bit better than it did in Xenoverse, just because of how when you go into like attacks in Budokai and like Raging Blast, games like that, you watch this cutscene play out, right? Whereas like in Xenoverse, that doesn't really happen. So I do think it would actually be cooler and fit more in the world of Tenkaichi to have a creative character instead of Xenoverse. But at the same time, I do think that when anime games add creative character, it never really turns out right. Like with Jump Force, like with Xenoverse. Like Xenoverse is cool, but like, I don't know. I feel like they never truly do it right, you know, to where it's like, okay, my created character looks so good, like better than Dragon Ball characters, or like better than the characters of that game's main roster, right? I get it that it's not supposed to, but I just feel like, I don't know, like no game will ever do it like Soul Calibur, you know what I mean? Or like to the extent of a Soul Calibur or a Saints Row. Like I don't think any anime game is gonna do it on that level, so at that point they just shouldn't do it at all. And I will say Xenoverse did it fairly well. Like that's not to like hate on Xenoverse's create a character aspect, but I just feel like it could be better. And I just feel like they don't need to add that to this game. If they want to keep that Xenoverse exclusive, that's fine by me. I just want Xenoverse to die. I actually would have liked Xenoverse a lot more if they had more ways to play like offline, because I played that game a lot offline. A lot of the missions they had online, it's like, and once you get down to it, the fighting and the core gameplay of Xenoverse just sucks. Like that's the main reason I hate that game and why I never ever want to play it again. But I do like the idea of being able to go on missions with friends, and I think if I would have played it online more, like when I had the game, I probably would have had more fun with it. But the fact that there was not a lot of support for the game offline sucked. Like, why can't I do missions with my friend that's sitting next to me? You know, why does it have to be online? That's something that was missing from Xenoverse that shouldn't have been missing, you know, and I think that that really played into why I hate the game. Now, I've also heard people say that Burst Limit should have actually gotten the spot instead of Tenkaichi 4, and a lot of people say that Burst Limit is like really, really good. I think that Raging Blast is to Tenkaichi as what Burst Limit is to the original Budokais. The music was absolutely fire. I do love the overall aesthetic, and I do love the music. I had a great time with Burst Limit, I will say that much. But again, I don't know if I'd want another Burst Limit, especially with Fighters being that primary 2D Dragon Ball Z fighting game that's already out, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And speaking of fighters, Dragon Ball FighterZ 2. We know that the game is still being supported. I think Dragon Ball FighterZ 2 is still a possibility, but maybe not as soon as we thought it was going to be. Dragon Ball FighterZ is going to be at EVO, so I do think that we'll have some kind of announcement at EVO or at the end of EVO. Like, to be honest, I think it's still possible for FighterZ 2 to get announced, but I don't know if it's gonna happen at EVO. I don't think that Tenkaichi 4 is going to replace Fighters in the competitive sense, in like the tournament sense. So I do think that FighterZ 2 is still a possibility, but to announce a FighterZ 2 so close to announcing Tenkaichi 4, like there's no way they're gonna announce that, right? So I feel like now, I'm not really sure what's gonna happen, but I do think that FighterZ 2 is still possible, especially with how much money the game made and how big of a success Fighters was. I feel like we already know the game's getting more support, and we already know it's getting another world tour, so I think FighterZ 2 is still possible. I'm gonna have more videos about FighterZ 2 and like what I would want, or what I think they're gonna do with Fighters, just in like separate discussions and separate videos, because for this video I feel like I want to keep it more so focused on Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4 and, you know, just the Dragon Ball games themselves, not talking about the fighting game scene and not talking about one specific Dragon Ball fighting game. But yeah, for this Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4 game, I just hope that they make it similar to Raging Blast and they take the Tenkaichi formula and perfect it, you know, make it really smooth, really solid, not janky, and I think they're gonna do a good job because, I mean, just from that trailer alone, the graphics and everything looks so sexy, so smooth, so I feel like there's no way they're gonna have that old school jank that the old Tenkaichi games reeks of, and as long as they keep the same formula and make the game fun, with graphics looking as good as that trailer, there's no way I'm gonna be disappointed, you know? I really hope that we just get a game that's fun. I think that's what Dragon Ball Z game fans and anime game fans in general are missing right now, is just an anime game that's fun. You know, I know some people have been really enjoying Dragon Ball The Breakers. I never played it personally. I just don't want to play a Dead by Daylight Dragon Ball game. Like, I don't know. But I've heard it's really good. I've heard people have been having a lot of fun with it. And, you know, hey, kudos to those people. Like, you know, do you, right? But I just don't want to play that. I'm sorry. I just don't want to play that, you know? But I just really hope that this game is fun because we do have that competitive game. So, like, if they don't want to make this game competitive and they just want to focus on making it fun, I'm so so for that. Like, I really just miss when games used to be fun. And Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi came from an era where anime games were fun, were first and foremost fun, where the games focused on being fun first in that old school gaming era. So I really hope that whatever they decide to do with this new entry into the franchise, that they still bring back a lot of the old school elements and like the core values of what made those games so fun and incorporate those into this new game, because I just want this game to be really fun. I want this game to be a fun banger I could play with my friends. Hopefully it's cross-plat, but I mean, if it's not, you know, that sucks, I guess, but I understand. That might be asking too much, but hey, I just want the game to be fun and, you know, a game that I can have a fun time with. A game that isn't Xenoverse. I hope the gameplay is a lot more fun than Xenoverse, and I really hope they bring back like the fusions where you could like pick two characters in like a 5v5 and you could fuse two characters together. Oh, that would be so sick. Please bring that back. Also bring back the transformations. Like, that's the one thing I miss about Dragon Ball Z games from fighters, is that there's no fusions, there's no transformations that you could do. Like, oh, that was so cool. Also, beam struggles. Like, oh my god, we need beam struggles back, please. But don't make it to where it's carpal tunnel inducing. Just make it interesting. Just bring back the beam struggles and make it to where, you know, it's done in an interesting way. But yeah, I miss so many cool things that they used to do with Dragon Ball Z games, and I really hope that they bring them back for this new game. But that's pretty much all I have to say for this one, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If there's any Dragon Ball Z game fans out there, what do you guys think about my takes of the games, and what's your favorite Dragon Ball Z game? Are you guys excited for this new Dragon Ball Z game? Let me know in the comments below. Please leave a like on the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. That helps me out a ton. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see y'all in the next video.